Well, we're going to stay on the view from Israel in all of this, the war, and also these reports of negotiations. For that, we can join Noga Tarnopolsky in Jerusalem. Noga, tell us more about how Israeli officials are reacting to this indication that a diplomatic solution could be on the table.
Well, there's been very terse response here, Karis, and just from the Prime Minister, who late last night put out a 37-second video clip saying that he had spoken with Trump yesterday. An important statement, since it was clear that the Israelis were caught completely unprepared for Donald Trump's announcement. And in fact, Trump's declaration contradicted words of Netanyahu's just from about 2 hours earlier, when he had a chat with one of his close ministers and said, oh, yeah, we're advancing, we're going full bore ahead. So it was clear that Israelis and Netanyahu were caught by surprise. It was important that he made that statement. And then all he said, basically, is that Donald Trump believes that the achievements of the Israeli and the American armies could be used as leverage, and that no matter what happens, Israeli interests will be safeguarded. So very, very little information there. My sense behind this silence and the terse statement is that Israel is still scrambling to figure out how serious this is. And the assessments that I have been hearing here in Jerusalem is that the Israeli government is assessing that Trump is actually quite serious about hoping to get to a deal. Whether he'll succeed or not is a different matter.
All right, well, meanwhile, Israel has vowed to keep up attacks on both Iran and Lebanon. In fact, the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, said Tuesday that the military would take control of South Lebanon from the border with Israel all the way to the Litani River. Let's take a listen to that first.
Hundreds of thousands of residents of southern Lebanon who evacuated north will not return south of the Litani River until security is guaranteed for residents of the north. All 5 bridges over the Litani that Hezbollah used to transport terrorists and weapons have been blown up, and the IDF will control the remaining bridges and the security zone up to the Litani. The principle is clear: where there is terror and missiles, there will be no homes and residents, and the IDF will be inside.
Noga, tell us what you make of that statement.
There are 2 parts to that statement. On the one hand, it's nothing surprising. We should all remember that back in November 2024, a ceasefire agreement was signed between Hezbollah and Israel, sponsored and mediated by the United States. And this held that Hezbollah had to leave southern Lebanon and had to disarm, that it had to become a border between 2 sovereign nations. Lebanon and Israel, without this permanent threat. So on the one hand, what the defense minister is saying is that Israel expects that the terms of that ceasefire to be respected. But of course, the menacing tone and the reference to civilians who will not be able to come back is clearly a threat. That as long as Israelis can't live in the north, which is the reality right now, the Israeli north is not livable right now due to Iranian and Hezbollah barrages. He's saying no one will be able to live in southern Lebanon either. This is definitely a way of trying to put pressure on the Lebanese government to act even more forcefully than it already has against Hezbollah. And it's an overt threat to Hezbollah. Of course, this also kind of goes hand in hand with much more bombastic threats that we've heard from other Israeli ministers, like the finance minister yesterday, who said that Israel should completely occupy a zone even to the north of the Litani River. So there's a bit of a mishmash in Israeli messaging, from straight out military announcements to a sort of somewhat occupational fantasies that we're hearing from Prime Minister Netanyahu's ministers.
Well, we have seen more missiles fired from Iran towards Israel this Tuesday. What's the latest there?
It's really been a constant barrage. It's hard to describe. We all here in Israel have an app on our phones about sirens, about incoming air raid sirens sounding, and it's simply been nonstop. Somewhere in this country since this morning, there has been a missile alert I think, at any given moment. In the last half an hour, it's been in Tel Aviv, it's been in Bedouin areas of the Negev Desert, and again over Dimona. There's been significant damage to property and to entire buildings in Israel today, but I think thanks to the real discipline of Israelis who really rush to bomb shelters whenever they hear a siren, there haven't been more than a few people wounded just yet. But the interruption of life in Israel, if I told you earlier that it's impossible to live in the Israeli north, I should also add that in the entire country of Israel, life has been completely interrupted. No shopping, no schools, constant fear of where the nearest shelter is.